So did anybody else make a Black Friday, Cyber Week, Cyber Monday, whatever the special day are, purchase that they're excited about this year? Let me tell you about my newest fascination. It started yesterday afternoon. I bought an Echo Dot on Amazon. Did anybody else get one of those? They're like selling them for like $29. Now, first of all, the thing kind of creeps me out because it's always listening. And in my paranoia, that kind of bothers me. But it came in the mail, and then yesterday I set it up, and Meredith was gone last night with, working with some folks that she works with, and I started playing, and I just told it, I said, Alexa, play Christmas music. Now, typically, like, those electronic talking devices, they don't understand me very well. Between my a little bit of a stutter and a redneck drawl, they say different things. But I said, Alexa, play Christmas music. And it instantly started playing Christmas music. And I was really excited. And I'm excited about that because I was not always a Christmas fan. And over the last few years, I've really turned into one. And so I'm sitting there, like, I talked Meredith into getting a real tree, not a fake tree this year. I forgot how much real trees cost. That frustrated me a little bit. I also had to fumble, like, trying to put water in the tree holder thingy last night. That was interesting. I had to get down on my all fours with a Nukes cup and do that. I've become so excited about Christmas. There's a couple things that always make me excited about Christmas. The first thing is I love the family stories that come with Christmas. You know, many of us have like these stories that we tell about maybe when we were kids about this special Christmas or something special that happened. When I was 18 months old, my mom for Christmas wanted to give me her childhood rocking horse. And so her dad completely like sanded this thing down and repainted it and refinished it. But the only problem was, like, we were having Christmas at my dad's family's place, and rocking horse was at my mom's family's place. And so on Christmas Eve, early that morning, Mom got up and she drove in her 1966 Mustang. This was in 1981, so it wasn't a classic yet. It was just an old junky car. And she drove all the way up Highway 1 to Shreveport, the back way to Omaha, Texas, where she grew up. It's like a 7-hour drive back then. This was before I-49. And then she drove right back home, and then we did Christmas Eve at church. And then as soon as Christmas Eve was over at church, we got back in the same old junky Mustang and drove 6 hours to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where my dad's family's from. And the whole time they managed to hide this rocking horse from me. And like I see those pictures now, and I realize, like, man, my mom drove a lot that day so I could have this rocking horse. You think about cool Christmas stories. One of my favorite Christmas stories of my family is about my great uncle Burl. He was a Marine in World War II, served in the South Pacific, and the family got notification in early December that he was going to be home. The war was over. We'd had VJ Day, and they were just waiting for Big Brother to come home. My great-grandfather was it was an Army career. He was in World War I, and so this family knows what it's like to come home from war. And this is like so stereotypical Christmas story, it belongs on the Hallmark Channel. Like, seriously? Like, I don't know how there's not been a movie made about this yet, but my grandmother, they were at church on Christmas Eve at Oak Grove Baptist Church outside Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And Burl was not home yet, and she remembers they got out of church and they got in the car to drive the few miles back to the house, and she told her parents, Burl's going to be home. And they're like, no, he's not. It's going to be probably after the new year, troop transport. He's probably still stuck in San Francisco, da-da-da-da. And they come home, and the road was really big and long, and they come around this huge bend, and the house that my great-grandfather built was on the top of this hill, and they turned around the bend, and the light was on in the kitchen. And they could tell, and Burl was home. It's like these fun Christmas stories. We have them. They're awesome. One of the things I love about Christmas, though, is Advent. And Advent is actually what made me fall back in love with Christmas. And if Advent is anything, Advent is the ultimate Christmas, family Christmas story. Those warm fuzzies that we love to get in the holiday season, some of us instantly create that. Some of us get mad because we might not have those warm fuzzy feelings. Or some of us are just really tired of watching A Christmas Story on TBS for 24 hours straight. I totally watch it. But Christmas is that time where we want to see goodness. We want to understand what good means. We want these things. And Advent helps us reset ourselves into the story of goodness. It helps us reset ourselves into the story of Jesus every year. See, we need Advent because we need goodness. We need something else. We need to know that there's something bigger than us and there's something else going on in this world besides the things that seem right in front of us. Because also, how many of y'all get really stressed out over the holiday season? Like Christmas gets really busy. It's like the end of the year, so work's hustling. You're trying to make sure everything's squared away for that. Then you have the whole family thing to take care of. You're driving all over Kingdom Come over the course of a couple of days to see stuff. When I was a kid, I loved Christmas parties. There's only like one or two a year, and now as an adult, I feel like there's a Christmas party every single night. Who thought parties could be stressful? Like those things that are right in front of us this time of the year also can blind us for what the big picture is going on. So today, we're talking about this idea of goodness and how Advent redefines that. And so some of you might be knowing exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, Advent, yeah, okay. Some of you are like, Brooks, I have no idea what this A word means. And so we're going to do a little bit of Advent 101 this morning to get started, and then we're going to jump into a prophecy from the book of Isaiah. But in Latin, Adventus means the coming. And it's the time of the year where we celebrate the first coming of Jesus, like sweet little baby Jesus. But it's also the time of the year to where we celebrate the second coming of Jesus, the fact that we are expecting and we are looking for him to come back, and we are excited about that. Advent's about how we process our hope and how we process that expectation for Jesus. We're remembering what's going on. We all have the manger scenes. I like the big blow-up ones out in front yards now. Those are really cool. I wish I had some of those. But I would also, too much work for me. I like to watch other people's. But Advent also gives us something to look forward to because we actually have to think and pray, and what does it mean for us to have our hope in Jesus coming back? The same stories that people told to give them hope thousands of years ago, the same stories we look to with hope now. And then Advent's also the time where we imagine and we realize the reality of, no, Jesus is here in our world. And he's doing these things for us. Advent's the beginning of the Christian year. If you grew up at a Catholic church or a Methodist and a more traditional Methodist church, I always say Foundry's the weirdest Methodist church you'll ever find. But a Lutheran or Presbyterian, this Advent thing is something you understand about. But there's a thousands of year old tradition of the Christian year. And it's a way that the church, through its worship and through its prayer and scripture reading, it celebrates the entire life of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, the activity of Jesus, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. It celebrates the coming of the Holy Spirit. Actually, today is New Year's Day in the church calendar. So happy New Year's Day. You didn't have a party last night, probably. You didn't know that. But this is the beginning of this year-long cycle of us just putting ourselves in a worshiping rhythm with Jesus and who he is. This is the time of the year where Foundry kind of inserts itself into something a little bit more traditional than we normally do. But in Advent, we wrap ourselves up in the story of Jesus. We wrap ourselves up in a different story than the one that's around us, a different story than what might be stressing us out right now, a different story that makes us groan or breathe deeply because we're nervous about Christmas coming, because that is a real thing for many of us. We wrap ourselves up in the real story of the gospel, because this is the thing. The gospel is good news. It's not just good advice. And so many times we think that these words of Jesus and what Jesus does, like, okay, this will make things a little bit easier for me if I do them. But the reality is that Jesus is here. And that's good news. And in Advent, we look and expect and talk about stories of good news. Advent's the time where we call for God to come down and to bring us his kingdom. If you're a fan of country western music, you might recognize the name Gary P. Nunn, or the person he typically played for was a man named Jerry Jeff Walker. Does anyone know Jerry Jeff Walker? Okay, I'm still insulating myself here. But there's a classic song, okay, I see you right there, London Homesick Blues. And it's this song that Gary P. Nunn wrote when he was stuck in London and all he wanted to do was be back in Texas. And it's a sad song where he's just pretty much like, it's cold here, I didn't know that, it's wet, it's so miserable, it makes me miss the desert. But in the beginning of the song, it's what I love about it, it's before he even sings, he sits there and he strums the guitar and he says a phrase I've been thinking about so much all week long, because it's the perfect place that many of us sit in the beginning of December. And he says this: let me try to put myself back in that place again. And he says it before he starts singing the song. And you don't know if he's saying because he's trying to remember what it was like to be in London and have to sing his homesick blues, or if he's trying to put himself back in the place where he really wants to be. In many ways, Advent, this first week of Advent, is us saying, before the whole song gets started, before everything gets going, it's us saying, let me get back in that place again. That place I yearn for, that place that I miss, those places that made us happy, but also those places that we're expecting and we're being hopeful as we're looking towards. So we start today with a prophecy from the book of Isaiah. It's one of my favorite Advent passages, and you're going to recognize this. It's one of our classic Christmas passages, but chapter 9, the words will be on the screen behind me. You can also read them in your Bible, but listen to these words. Nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled, but there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles, which lies along the road that runs between Jordan and the sea, will be filled with glory. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. And you will enlarge the nation of Israel, and its people will rejoice. They will rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, like warriors dividing the plunder. For you will break the yoke of their slavery and lift the heavy burden from their shoulders. You will break the oppressor's rod just as you did when you destroyed the army of Midian. The boots of the warrior and the uniforms blood-stained by war will also be burned. They will be fuel for the fire. For a child is born to us, and a son is given to us. And the government will rest upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And his government and its peace will never end. See, this story is not just a story about the birth of a baby, but it's a story of waiting for someone. Of waiting for someone who has the ability to fix all of the things. A couple of stuff tells us what's going on in this, and I've read this passage probably 100 times. I've preached this. I went back and checked my notes. I've preached this passage for 3 years during Advent. And one of the things I never recognized was, you ever notice, like, whenever you buy a car and it's that color you don't think you've ever seen before, then once you buy it, then you realize that you see that color everywhere? Okay, I've read this tons of times, but I never, like, the little tiny details. This week I was like, I want to know what on earth is going on with this whole Zebulun and Naphtali thing. Why is this in there? Is that important? There are two tribes of Israel, and there's something about this land. So this passage is talking about this land that it will be humbled, and they will see great peace and good things happen. And so there are two tribes of Israel. Every tribe was allotted a piece of land, and both of these pieces of land were extremely valuable. But every single time there was any conflict or war in Israel, these two tribes' territories were the first ones to go. That Zebulun had all of the ports and had all the sea trade that they needed. So, that's a pretty good place to go to. The Naphtali, it ran all the way down the Jordan River. Both of them were borders at the very northern kingdom. Like, these were places of great stress. Now, there were also parts of the territory that Israel, they wanted, they needed. It was almost as though, as long as we have these two things and these two things are safe, everything will go good for us. We can keep everything stable. We can keep the train on the tracks. Everything's going to be all right as long as we have the territory of Naphtali and Zebulun. But the bad thing was, it was the first thing to go most of the time. That they were riding on the health of these two places to provide the peace that they needed. See, it's almost like our own attempts at creating a goodness, they simply can't end right. Because we're always going to be stressing about it. We're always going to, if I can just have this one thing, if I can just take care of this one thing, if I can just have this one thing go right, if I can just have this one thing never go bad on me. Each of us have territories of Zebulun and Naphtali in our life. Those things that we're depending on to provide what we need, instead of looking and expecting and interacting with God and realizing that He provides every single thing, that He defines our goodness, that we don't have the ability to define our goodness. When I was a kid, how many of y'all remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books? Okay, those things were awesome. And I remember I was reading through all of them, and we had quite the controversy at Nachman Elementary in 1988 because we had a Choose Your Own Adventure bandit in the school library. Okay, so y'all familiar with these books? Remember, like you start reading it and you get to make a decision, and depending on like what decision you make, like you turn to that page. And so you can actually like get 5 or 6 or 7 storylines out of these books. Some kid was going into the library and was ripping out pages out of Choose Your Own Adventure books. Yeah, exactly, yes. Like if anything will get you cut on the playground when you're 8 years old. Y'all, we have the ability to rip the pages out ourselves. As much as we want things to go right, that when we are trying to do it on our own, when we're leaning too much on our Zebulons and our Naphtalies, we're going to find those pages that can get torn out, and we cannot get to where we're going. We can't even keep on going on with the story. But the awesome part, the part that many of us are so familiar with, is just verses. Is 9:6. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Those 4 titles, I think those have stuck in my memory of Christmas stories for so much of my life. And so what I want us to think about today is those 4 titles, but I also want to think about this. I want us to think about what Advent prayers do you need to be praying this year? What are the things and what are the places in your life that we need to open up? That Jesus might be asking for you to open up this year. That first title, Wonderful Counselor. This is not talking like a counselor like you would go to talk about things. This is talking about someone who is an advisor to the king, that he has his advisors around him. They have an ability to sort things out. They have the ability to help the king make right decisions, to see things beyond the scope of what he might be able to see. Whenever he is stressed out or he is anxious, they are there to provide calm in the midst of the storm. They're there to be a non-anxious presence. You know, a lot of times when I'm going through something, and it's something I suggest to people when they come and talk with me, and also in my own life, is I always want to find someone who's been through what I'm going through. Does anybody else do that? Because you can lean on somebody. You can ask them questions. They can say where they may have made good decisions or where they may have made bad decisions. I like the idea of having someone to talk to that has been through what I'm going through before. In Hebrews chapter 2, it tells us this about Jesus. Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, his brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God. Then he could offer a sacrifice which would take away the sins of the people. Since he himself had gone through suffering and testing, he's able to help us when we are being tested. You know, we can lean on Jesus. We can understand Jesus being that wonderful counselor because he's gone through every single thing before. Jesus came to this earth to go through the full range of human emotions so that he could be fully and absolutely capable of saving us because he's been there before. For some of us, that Advent prayer about seeing Jesus as a wonderful counselor means us asking Jesus just to help sort things out this season. That no matter where we are in life and how we are in life, we always have things that we need to have sorted out. Our prayer is just to say, Jesus, you've gone through anything and you've gone through everything. And I want to see you and experience you as a wonderful counselor this year. The second thing that the title is given is Mighty God. You know, this mightiness is talking about his capabilities. This is also a word for war. I mean, this passage, Chad, you're talking about bloodstained uniforms. We're going to read this at Christmas. This is appropriate. I know you were thinking it. Come on. But someone who has the absolute full capability. This is also the same word for hero in the Old Testament. That when we talk about resetting things, if you're going through our devotion this Advent that we're reading, we gave away last week, we start off in Genesis the first few times. You might be saying, why are we going to read Genesis during Christmas time, Chad? That reset is we realize this is the God who created the whole world, that he absolutely has capability, that he absolutely can stand up for us, that he has the power to do whatever might be necessary for us to have. That Advent prayer might be, Jesus, I need you to stand in some places for me. I need to see you as someone who's willing and able and is doing battle for me right now. Some of us have some big stuff going on, and we need to know that we have a hero, that we have a champion who has the ability to take care of things for us. What's so awesome is this second title, Mighty God, is then immediately contrasted with Everlasting Father. One of the most intimate relationships that we might have. I thought about that all week long, that he is mighty God, but he's also everlasting Father. This idea of everlasting, he is without limits. There's nothing that can stop him, that he can go as far as he needs to go as a father for us. It's not a God who doesn't relate to us, but it's a God who relates to us absolutely. It's a God who, when you look at the primary way he revealed himself to us, was revealing himself to us as a father. Is that intimate protector, is that loving protector, is that protector who has absolute awareness of who we are. That God knows us better than anyone else will ever know us. And so when we need to feel loved, when we need to feel comforted, when we need to feel any sort of those intimate emotions that we about half the time are terrified to tell somebody about, he knows exactly what we need. Some of us, our Advent prayer might mean to be, God, I need to understand what it means to be loved by you in a way without limits. The final way that he reveals himself to us is the Prince of Peace. Now think about this. All week long, I was looking at the Prince of Peace, and I thought about there was one thing that I do not like about this Christmas season and about Christmas season. I call it the holiday hustle. How many of y'all know what that's like? How many of y'all's to-do lists grow like crazy during Christmas? Your schedules grow. It seems like you need like 2 more hours in the day, and you're adding all these things in, and you're supposed to be more enjoyable. They're supposed to bring like holiday cheer to our lives, and we're like, oh my goodness. There's also the tendency to get really mad during the holiday season, okay? Like Marathon, we were watching a Christmas movie yesterday, and we were laughing because it was so cliche, because you know there's going to be some big, huge, gigantic family conflict in the middle. Okay, or it's like, I love Christmas Vacation. Like, you talk about the holiday hustle. Like, when I was a kid, I asked my dad, I said, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I want a squirrel to get loose during dinner. But that holiday hustle lasts year round. We're just more aware of it. But the Prince of Peace, that Jesus is the bringer of peace, and he's the definer of peace. Jesus came to fix chaos, to solve chaos. And he came in the middle of wherever we are, wherever we need peace in our life, he has the absolute ability to bring it and to create it, to cause it to happen, and to cause it to last. Our prayers say, Jesus, these are the places where I need you to calm down for me. Also means, Jesus, these are the places where I tend to cause chaos during the holiday season. Jesus, I need you to help me deal with that person in my family that always causes chaos. Like I think last year during the Christmas season, we did a sermon, we all have Cousin Eddies, but then we all also are Cousin Eddie sometimes. Jesus, I need to understand what true peace looks like. And here's the thing, all 4 of these, there's a decision that we make that predicates them being part of our life. And that decision is us realizing that we can't save ourselves, that God can save us. And that's what God came for. This whole season is about his ability to save us. And for the gospel to be good news, not just good advice, we have to prayerfully begin realizing the reality of who Jesus is. You know, for me, we talked about our Advent prayers. One of my Advent prayers this year is, I said, Jesus, I want to understand more of this, the 100% honest truthfulness of you being able to be in control of everything. It's easy for us to think about Christmas cards, or to think about songs, or to think about memories. It's easy for us to sensationalize and make Christmas this sentimental thing. My prayer this year is say, I want to see 100% realness from you. Our prayers, our Advent prayers, have the ability to reset. this season for us. Have the ability to reset our entire year. It's almost like we're prepping for what 2018 is going to look like by how we stop, we breathe deeply, and we focus on Jesus during this month. So think about those Advent prayers. Think about what does it mean for you to actually grasp what good news looks like in your life right now. Because that's what Jesus is coming to bring. He's coming to bring you good news. Pray for what does it mean for you to know Jesus in an intimate way? What does it mean for you to see and to experience and to interact with Jesus in a very real way, in a very personal way this year? Think about what does it mean for you to pray to experience Jesus more, to experience him truthfully in new ways and old ways, but for this to not be something that you just do because everybody else does, but for Christmas to be something that matters to you because Jesus matters to you. Maybe our Advent prayer is simply just to be more real. Real is something I know that I struggle with in my life, and I desire a lot at this phase of my life. And I've heard from enough other people to realize that's something that a lot of us want right now, and a lot of us value is realness and his truth. And so for some of us, our Advent prayer is just me saying, Jesus, I need to know some truth, and I trust for you to show it to me.